You know, many times it takes a tragic event and we start asking those questions. What's life all about? What happens when you die? Well, for Justin Wiesinger, he was asking those questions. Justin, welcome to 100 Huntley Street.
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Greg. It's great to be here.
Now, before we answer these big questions, explain to me why you have your office on a pirate ship. Okay, we're in the chapel of the West Edmonton Mall.
Yeah.
Just down the hallway here is this big pirate ship, and you have an office there.
Yeah, well, Greg, I was inspired by another Christian author named Bob Goff, who actually has an office on Tom Sawyer Island at Disneyland. And reading that in his book, I was like, man, I need to top that somehow. And I didn't have, Tom Sawyer. I didn't have Disneyland nearby, so I figured the next best thing sat in my own hometown was a pirate ship, the Santa Maria ship in the mall. And I'm like, it only cost $2 to go on the ship, and nobody ever asked me to leave. So I just made it my home. Whenever I need inspiration or reignite my imagination, I'll just hop on board for a few hours, bring out my laptop, and sit down and get to work.
Yeah, you're a writer, you do video editing, you work in the church, and are you able to accomplish things when you're there?
Yeah, most of the time. I have to put in headphones sometimes because the echoiness of the room can kind of disrupt things. But yeah, if I have my music on or I'm editing a video, it works really well.
Okay, let's go back to 2011. You get word that your cousin Josh has been killed in an accident. What happened?
Yeah, so Greg, what happened was Josh and his younger brother Mitch and a few of his relatives were at a going away party on an acreage. And so Mitch was like 10 or 11 at the time, and he had played with a firearm, a .22 rifle, before with a friend there. And he was pointing it down the hallway, just looking at the scope because he was fascinated with the gun and stuff. And unfortunately for him, there was a bullet in the chamber that it was unlocked. So Josh had just gotten off the phone and he saw Mitch holding the gun accidentally pointing near him when he walked in the frame. And then Mitch flinched and pulled the trigger, accidentally shooting Josh in the neck. So he passed away that night. And yeah, I found out and it was crazy, but I didn't find out the detail about Mitch holding the gun until a few days later. So that really kicked in and I was very shocked and upset for him and his family.
Now, you grew up in a Christian home,
Yeah,
and I know this certainly was shaking your faith.
Yeah.
So you go to the funeral for your cousin Josh, who was also your friend.
Yeah.
Tell me what happened at the funeral that impacted you so greatly.
So at the time, Greg, I wasn't really following God with all my passion and heart and stuff. I was just kind of rolling with the punches in my faith journey and stuff. And this was a big wake-up call for me. So as I was looking for convincing proof that Jesus was actually alive in this tragic situation, I saw so much of God's grace and his love and compassion and just the care and the joy, even despite this grief and pain and the hardship of the situation. I just saw that his family was connecting with a source of power and strength that I wasn't aware of. So it blew my mind that God may actually have been real, and that heaven may have actually been real, and that Josh wasn't dead, he was actually alive.
So it caused you to then, even though again you had this relationship with Jesus, but maybe not as deep as you wanted it,
Yeah.
but you still then were asking the question then, well, why am I here and what happens when I die?
Exactly. So I think I was still I had one foot in the pond and one foot out of it. I was trying to live my old life still and do the things that I always wanted to do that weren't serving God, but I wanted to, I had to make a choice. I had to go all in for Jesus. So I was able at the funeral procession to imagine myself slipping under the casket in the hole in the ground and saying, and I made a declaration to God and said, I want to die to my old self, my old way of thinking, my old way of doing things, and I want to live for you, God, today, this day forward, and I want to do life with you, God, because I feel like that's the best way to live, and it's not to be lukewarm, the Bible says. So.
Well, God uses all things, to bring us closer to him, and he uses it for good, even when it's tragic. In your case of, with your cousin Josh. Now, Mitch, who was a young boy at the time, it was an accident. He never intended anything to happen to his brother. He loved him. But you were able to be instrumental in a situation at a Christian camp when you invited Mitch there. This is an amazing story. Tell me.
Yeah, it's an incredible story. So the summer after, I invited Mitch to Camp Nackaman with me, and a few weeks into the summer, he pulled me aside, and he was kind of tearing up a little bit, and he said he had a story to share with me. So he pulled me aside and said that one of his campers, maybe a 10 or 11-year-old boy, opened up to him about something that was troubling him on his mind, and he said that when he was a little bit younger, he had accidentally shot and killed his older cousin when they were out with rifles.
Wow.
So that to me, I was just like, wow, for God just to put them in the same situation and say, to this boy, you're not alone anymore, and Mitch, you're not alone in this struggle in coming over this grief and this guilt and shame of having been involved in this situation was just amazing. And I just saw God painting a better story for Mitch, and God just bringing redemption to this story, that like he was able to use his story to share with this young boy that he doesn't have to be filled with guilt and grief anymore.
I mean, yeah, I mean, for Mitch and this young boy, I mean, both healing in that situation.
Yeah.
So these things, again, so tragic as they are, it changed you.
Yeah.
And you're a guy now that you want to dream big dreams.
Yeah.
You're a writer, you're, involved in, church ministry. You just want to see people's lives change. And so for yourself, you want to have the big dreams, and you also want others to have the big dreams.
Right.
So you write a book, The Childlike Heist.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
So a few years ago, I was planning to just write down everything I could remember from my childhood. And I'd always dabbled in writing and stuff. And when I was a little boy, I dreamed of writing a book someday, kind of like C.S. Lewis, like a fantasy novel or something. But I decided just to start writing down and journaling everything that I'd ever remembered from my childhood. And some of these stories made me laugh, some made me cry, and some made me reminisce. And I just realized that there was this young boy kind of still living inside of me that hadn't come out to play it all recently. So I shared the stories with some friends, and they thought that they were amazing and hilarious and stuff, and they encouraged me to keep writing and to clarify it and get an editor and stuff. So the whole premise of the book, Greg, is a quoting from Jesus when he says in Matthew 18:3, where you need to actually become like little children in order to see and enter the kingdom of heaven. And that just struck a chord with me, and I've never been able to get over that verse and what it all entails. So it's called The Childlike Heist because I want to help people recapture a sense and a glimmer of that wonder and that expectation and that joy and that playfulness that God calls us to live in our childlike faith. And I want to help people re-envision what it looks like to be childlike as adults.
Yeah, and it's childlike, not childish. And if you want to find out the difference, you got to get the book from Justin, because it's very, very important that we understand that there is a difference between those two. And how can people get this book, The Childlike Heist?
Yeah, they can pick it up. My website is thechildlikeheist.ca, or they can just search that title on Amazon Canada, on Kindle, and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Justin, appreciate your enthusiasm, dreaming big, and just keep on dreaming. And if you're in the West Edmonton Mall, look for the guy on the pirate ship.
If you were impacted by the stories shared today, hit our subscribe button and stay up to date with all our life-changing stories shared on 100 Huntley Street.